Hello folks, just wanted to give a somewhat short update. YouTube has finally enabled 60 frame per second videos for, as far as I can tell, all accounts. Now you do have to be viewing in a browser that supports it, which to my understanding is pretty much everything except Firefox for some reason. I also don't know if it works on mobile. What does that mean for the channel? That means that going forward, all new videos that I will be recording will be recorded in 60 frames a second. Now, videos I've already recorded will not be in 60 frames a second just because they can't be. So, Shadow of Mordor, unfortunately, will not be 60 frames a second. Dead Rising 3, also same deal. Wildstar for the next month and a half-ish also will not be in 60 frames per second. But future Let's Plays, Let's Tries, etc., as long as I can do it, which I don't see a problem, will be recorded in 60 frames a second. Now, if you don't care about any of the technical hoo-ha, you can stop here. All you need to know is that going forward, new recorded videos will be available at 60 frames a second. Again, you have to be using a supported browser, aka not Firefox, and you have to choose the option to run it in either 720 or 1080. I always say 1280. In fact, when you choose 720 or 1080, you'll actually see if it's 60 frames per second. You'll see it says something like 720p 60. So, anyway, now those of you who might be more interested in some of the behind the curtain type stuff, this definitely is going to present some technical difficulties which are going to have to be worked through, more so than I thought. I've been kind of prepping for this for a little while. In fact, for a little while I was actually recording and encoding my videos in 60 frames a second, just kind of to be ready for this. And I kind of fell out of it because it was more work, more time, etc. So I stopped doing it, but now I'm going to start doing it again. I've spent most of yesterday actually doing various experiments, and I'm still working on it. The long and short of it is recording at 60 frames per second is a pretty big jump from 30 frames a second, as from the recording standpoint. For the first part of that, especially since I do 1080p, that means that my games need to consistently run at 60 frames a second or a lot closer to 60 frames a second. It's kind of pointless if I'm recording and encoding at 60 frames a second when I'm averaging around 40 to 45. So that means going through and maybe looking at the games that I'm playing, that ones that are stressful on the system, kind of toning those back a little bit. For example, with Legends of the Fallen, or Lords of the Fallen, I had to actually tone back the graphical details just so I could keep a steady 60 to 70 frames per second. Now, you guys on YouTube aren't going to notice because, unfortunately, still YouTube's codecs are pretty crappy. I'm hoping that's their next focus. But currently, you can definitely tell there's some serious artifacts going on. But that's been that way for a while. And it's not really going to change until YouTube ups their game on their codec. But aside from all that, I am going to have to kind of work on that, because with my current setup, I could run most games at least 45 to 50-ish, and that was good enough because I was encoding at 30 anyway. But now that I want to try to get a consistent 60, I'm going to have to fiddle with that a bit. That's not a big deal. It's just more a case of trying these different settings, try it out for a little while, record, etc. Excuse me. Now, here comes the crappier part. Well, not crappier, but here comes the more touchy part that I have found, is that the codecs that I'm using, and I did warn you, this is very behind the curtain, so I realize a lot of you probably don't care about a lot of this, but the codecs that I was using, I couldn't record with my current settings at 60 frames a second. In other words, I don't know if it, I presume it's either a write issue, it couldn't write to the hard disk fast enough, or it couldn't encode fast enough. I'm not sure. I would think it would be a hard drive writing issue, but I don't know. Even then, I have a hard time buying that that's the case. Regardless, it can't do it. Now, I write to two terabyte drives in a RAID 0 array, so I've got pretty darn good write speeds. But I still wasn't able to do it with my current encoding settings. And I fiddled with various settings, and I finally found something where, at least for a few tests, I could record at 60 frames a second. Here's the big problem. Let me pull up my normal size of various recordings here. So if I look at, say, I'm looking at a WildStar recording, right? And it's a 5.5 minute video and about 5.5 gigs. So about a gig a minute. I mean, that's a lot, but I've got a lot of hard drive space. Like I say, I've got, over usually around a terabyte free. So that's not a big deal. I still have a lot of headroom. Now, with the new recording method, I get about 1 minute is about 10 gigs. Let's say that again. 1 minute is 10 gigs. That's with low settings using a DxTory codec. The lowest I can possibly get to. The only thing I can do to improve that so far has been to compress it, and that's actually made my frame doesn't write 60 frames a second anymore. It writes it like 45. So it's going to be something I have to work with. My goal right now, given that YouTube's quality, the actual video quality isn't very good, I definitely want to get that 60 frames a second, because the 60 frames per second is absolutely noticeable, without question. The whole 1080p versus 900p, I still think games should be aiming for 1080p. But to be honest, most people, myself included, probably are not going to be able to notice the difference between a 900p game and a game running in 1080p. Most people aren't going to notice, even the ones who probably think that they can. Again, they should be shooting for that, but most people are going to notice. 60 frames a second versus 30, absolutely noticeable. I'm sorry, if you don't see a difference between 60 and 30, and like totally legitimately, I think you should get your eyes checked, because even I don't have great eyes, and I can usually tell the difference between 60 frames and 30. It really does make a significant difference. That's why I really want to focus on hitting that 60 frames per second. But this 10 gigs for 1 minute is obviously not sustainable. Here's the other problem with that. With my current encode settings, it takes about 10 minutes to encode 1 minute of video. Right now, as we speak, I'm actually recording a 30-minute section of Lords of the Fallen. It's going to take about a grand total of 6 hours to record 30 minutes, to encode 30 minutes. Again, 30 minutes of video, 6 hours to encode. Again, given how much I upload, this is not sustainable. So it's going to be something I have to work on, but it is going to be my focus, and I'm going to spend the next few days trying to find a happy combination of encode settings and recording settings and codec settings to kind of get this in line. This is again more for your information. I know some people are interested in this kind of stuff. Maybe some of you are interested in running your own Let's Play channel or currently doing it, and you might be interested in how to do it. And if you have any ideas, I would absolutely love to hear them. Because I really don't like fighting with codecs and whatnot. It's a special kind of hell. But anyway, yeah, that's where we are. And if you haven't figured it out already, I actually don't know what I'm going to record to put here, but it will be in 60 frames a second. So hopefully you actually notice the difference, at least with the frame rate. But anyway, that's it for now. This actually ended up being longer than I anticipated. That's what she said. Anyway, you guys leave comments. Let me know what you think. Have you already noticed it on other channels? It looks like this actually went live yesterday on October 29th, as far as I can tell. That's when people very first started noticing it. And I uploaded it to my channel, and it just worked. So, yeah. Anyway, leave comments. Let me know what you're thinking, and I'll see you next time.